You can create a Cinema 4D file from scratch from within After Effects. Cinema 4D Lite, the program that's bundled with After Effects, is a standalone program, but the only way to access it is from within After Effects. Now, if you own a retail version of Cinema 4D, you can access that program directly. But this lesson is geared toward people who don't own a retail version of Cinema 4D. Now, I'm not going to even begin to describe all of the cool features inside Cinema 4D. There's just no way I could do that in a few minutes. If you do want to learn more about Cinema 4D, then I recommend you take a look at the Infinite Skills course, Learning Maxon Cinema 4D R14 by Chris Martin. And R14 is the release number of the Cinema 4D Lite that comes with After Effects. So while this course will cover some things that won't be inside the Lite version, it is a good way to learn about Maxon Cinema 4D. Now, because this workflow between Cinema 4D Lite and the Creative Cloud version of After Effects is so new, you can expect in the not too distant future that Infinite Skills will start putting up some courses that are geared specifically to this workflow. To see how you can create a file from scratch, I simply want you to open up After Effects. We'll just shut down this little splash screen here. Now we'll just go to File, New, Maxon Cinema 4D File. That asks you to give the file a name and a file folder location. I'll call it Test. And I'm going to store it in the My After Effects Exercise Files folders on my desktop. Click Save. And that puts it here in the project panel and opens up Cinema 4D Lite. What you see here is this blank slate waiting for you to fill it up with cool looking 3D objects. Now I'm just going to go through a couple of simple things here. First of all, this is the ground plane. Just take a look at the X, Y, Z. Your X comes down here, that's the red, and then Y goes up, and then Z goes back like that. If I want to control the view of the ground plane, I hold down the Alt or the Option key, and then just move it around as my mouse. Left mouse does that. The scroll wheel does this, up and down, left and right. And the right button does this, zooming in and zooming out. That's how you change your view. And whatever view you end up here will be the view that you see inside After Effects. Let's just add an object to it. And you add objects up here. Let's just open this up here. You've got all kinds of objects here. Let's start off by adding a cube. Just click that. It puts a cube there right at the origin. You see that it's partially below, partially above. It's centered on the origin. If I hold on the Alt or the Option key and just drag like that, you see that we're below the ground plane and above the ground plane. We can move this guy around by just grabbing these arrows. Pull this guy like that. Along the Z-axis, the Y-axis. If I just grab it, I can move the whole thing around anywhere. One big chunk like that. You can also scale it by clicking on the Scale button here. That adds these little blocks here that allow you to scale it like so. Adds little points here too, so you can scale it on individual axes like that. Now a gray box is kind of boring, so let's add some color to it. You do that using a material. So you need to create a new material. So you go down here where it says Create. Click on that. Say I want a new material. And now that creates this default gray new material. Let's just double click on it. It opens up the material editor. There are all kinds of things you can do with the material. Starting off by just changing the color. So let's make it, I don't know, more red than gray, right? We can make it a little transparent by clicking on this checkbox. Right now it's 100% transparent by default. It says brightness, but we can just drop this down to say, not really brightness. We want to be a little less transparent. Let's make it reflective. Click on that checkbox. Starts off fully reflective. Like that down too. It says brightness again, but it really means reflectivity. And now I'll close this down to say I like that material, and nothing happens. That's because you need to apply the material. So I just drag this material to the block. Now this looks cooler down here than that does. That's because one, it's a cube, and two, because it's not rendered. If you want to see how it's going to look rendered, then you click on this little render button up there and it temporarily renders it for you. Again, it's not all that exciting because there's no lights on it, things like that, and it's not a sphere. I'll just click anywhere here that turns off the renderer. All right, I want to move this guy out of the way, so I'm going to click on this Move tool here. Click on this, slide it back a ways, right along that axis. I can lift it up a bit here, sort of resting on the ground plane. Now I want to add some text. So I go to this guy over here, which says Freehand. But inside the Freehand, if I click on this little disclosure triangle there, there's a text option. Click on that. When you do that, it puts text here at the origin. Now notice the text is an outline. That's called the spline. This is one reason why you can't import an After Effects text layer, because After Effects text layers are vector objects. Here, this is a spline, so you make 3D text from splines here, not from vector objects. All right, let's just change the text right down over here to the right under the object, or let's say 3D text. But so far, this doesn't look very 3D, right? Well, we make it 3D by applying an extrusion to it. Extrusions are right there, the next box over. Open up that guy, and we'll take the Extrude NURBS. I love some of the 3D terminology that you encounter here. It's going to be different than what you've seen inside After Effects. Click on Extrude NURBS, and nothing happens. That's because there are parent and child relationships here inside Cinema 4D Lite. If you take a look over here at the objects, this is the objects view here, the objects panel, you see that extrude nerves is just residing there by itself. You need to tell text to go into extrude nerves. You need to tell text to be a child of extrude nerves. So you just drag it up here till the arrow points down, and now text is a child of extrude nerves. So text can be independent of it. You can change the text without having to worry about changing the extrusion. So now I'm going to click on extrude nerves to make that active. And down here under object, it talks about its movement. And the movement on the right-hand side there is how thick it is. Let's drag this up a bit to make it thicker. Now I want to add material to that, but I'm going to use a preset this time. The preset's over here in this little tab. It says Content Browser. Click on that. I'm going to double click on presets here. And then there's this light group. Double click on that. And inside here there's materials. And all sorts of materials here. And I like this glass simple red. That looks pretty cool. So I'll double click on that, and that adds it down here in this group. But again, it doesn't apply it to the text. It just gives you the option to apply it to the text. So now I drag it to the text, and it doesn't look good at all, right? Because it's a pretty complex material, so it doesn't really render very nicely here in this sort of preview mode. I want to take a better look at it by holding down the Alt or the Option key and kind of changing my view here a little bit. I'm going to zoom in a bit, right mouse button, pull it down a bit like so. And now I'm going to render it. So click on this little clapboard there, and that's what it looks like. Close that down by clicking anywhere. All right, now I'd like to add a light. I can add a light over here. We'll just click this little fly out there and click on light. It's kind of a generic light, an omni light it's called here. It's like a point light in After Effects. Just click on that. It puts it right at the origin, so it kind of makes things look black suddenly because it's sitting there right on the text. You can pull it back like this, and that'll illuminate the text like so. Lift it up a bit. And there are many kinds of lights. That's just one of them. If you go down here to the light's properties here, you see that you can change it to a different kind of a light. You can use ambient illumination. There isn't an ambient light as there is inside After Effects, but you can make this ambient like that, and it makes everything the same brightness. I want to animate things a little bit here. I want to animate the text a bit. I'm going to zoom back out a bit here. Option key, back out a little bit, lifting it up a bit, rotating it around a bit like so I can see things a little better. I want to move the text around and animate it. So I'm going to take the text by selecting it like that, and I want to move it kind of out of the way. Now if I do this, I really can't tell if I'm on the ground plane or not. So I'm going to undo that by doing Control-Command-Z. I'm going to use the arrows instead. So I'm going to take this guy and slide it that way, take this guy and slide it that way. Now I want to set a keyframe, and there are multiple ways to set keyframes. I'm going to try the easy way here. So I'm going to go back to the Objects panel over here, clicking on that. I'm going to select the text to make it active, and then I go down to the coordinates here. So now that this is active, I can turn on keyframes for it by just clicking on this little button right there. It says a little key there. Click on that, and that puts keyframes there for the beginning of this animation. And you can see all these guys turn kind of pinkish orange. That means that there are keyframes placed at that point. Now I'm going to pull this guy in a little ways. The animation is 3 seconds long by default, so I'll go to, let's say, right around here, so to pull that in. Now I want to change the position, so I can pull this guy that way, pull it this way. And now I need to say, let's change the keyframes. Now in After Effects, if I just made that change like that, it would automatically add a keyframe. Here you've got to tell it, make a new keyframe there. Make them pink again. Let's just take a look at that animation. It goes like this. Now, it's not going to go to the left and then to the right. It's just going to make that move like that. As you'd expect, it works the same way in After Effects in terms of that kind of a keyframe. I want to move the box as well. So we'll get the box, make it active. Pull it, say, forward here toward the light. I'll move the light later. That'll be our starting point. So I select the cube, make sure it's active. There are its coordinates. Turn on its keyframes like so. I'll go in a little ways like this, where we got the text finished. I'll take this guy back, and we'll keyframe that. So I'll turn on keyframes again. So let's check that animation out and see if they crash into each other. Oh, ow, right there, right? So let's fix that. Right at that point, I'll pull it to the right. Again, in After Effects, this will be automatic, but here we got to click this guy. Now let's take a look at the animation. We'll get out of the way of the text, kind of go around it there like that. Now the light needs to be moved because we go to the beginning, kind of in the way. So I click on the light. Can't see it now, but I can pull it forward there. I can see its control there. Let's lift it up a bit like so. Change our view so we can see where the light's going to go. Top of the box like that. Okay, let's just check out that animation by clicking on the play button here. There we are. I'm going to change the camera view a little bit more again, just so we can see a little bit better like so. All right, that's just a basic animation. We could add a camera here and have the camera move too, but I've found that working with cameras here is a little trickier than working with cameras inside After Effects. And what's really cool is that you can bring in a C4D file, drop it into a comp, add an After Effects camera, then within the Cineware effect that controls the C4D file, tell it to use the After Effects comp camera instead of the one that you've got here. It's really pretty amazing that you can connect the two, especially because the C4D file acts like a 2D file, but you can actually control how it looks using an After Effects camera. And I'll explain that in a separate lesson. Okay, we've done this work now. We've got this animation. Let's just save this. Go File, Save, minimize this, and go back to After Effects. And this guy immediately updates. Now that instant update, that instant rendering is what makes experienced Cinema 4D users just go nuts, because it normally takes a fairly long time to render C4D files. Here, it renders instantly. Let's just add this to a comp. We'll make a new comp by dragging it down to the new comp icon like that. And there it is in the comp. I'll just scroll through here. Right now we've got adaptive resolution on, so it looks pretty chunky. I'm going to turn that off. Now it'll look better as I move through there. We're looking at the software renderer, which basically gives us the view that we were seeing inside Cinema 4D. Let's take a look at a better rendered view here by changing the render over here inside the Cineware effect to standard draft. And now we see the box in the text as we'd expect it to be, as it was inside Cinema 4D. So this, I think, is phenomenal. You can make 3D objects inside After Effects using the ray traced renderer, but this is much easier to use and has much more flexibility, even if you're not really comfortable using Cinema 4D. I think you can see that it's easier to make 3D objects there and to animate those objects there than it is to create them inside After Effects. So it's a huge plus now that Cinema 4D is included with After Effects.